Now, without further ado, let's dive into our first panel discussion. Our opening session is a ministerial panel, and it's titled Striking the Balance, Achieving Innovation-Friendly Tech Regulation. And moderating this panel is Mr. Emmanuel Lubanzadio. I hope I got that right. Yes, practice. Senior advisor at the Blue Owl Group. And joining him on stage are our distinguished panelists, Honorable Monica Musinero Masanza, Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation, Republic of Uganda.
You're allowed to clap too.
Let's
right?
go. Yes, definitely. Yes. Please come in. And then we also have Brilliant Habinzu, Permanent Secretary, Minister of Technology and Science, Zambia. Please. And last but not least, Dr. Margaret Yambura Ndungu, Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Information, Communication and Digital Economy, Republic of Kenya. All right, Emmanuel, it's over to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's very nice to have you all and see you all. But I'll wait till Dr. Ndungu is sitting. Well, I would like to welcome all of you to this panel session today, the ministerial one. The topic being striking the right balance to achieve innovation-friendly tech regulation. As many attendees and all of us know, we are Africa enthusiasts. So we also know that Africa is on the verge of becoming one of the world's most dynamic tech markets in the world, with its digital economy projected to reach an estimated 712 billion by 2050. However, the reality oftentimes remains that challenges such as fragmented and in some cases outdated policy frameworks have been noted as barriers by some. As we are seeing with the emergence of AI and other emerging technologies, it's increasingly important for regulators who've been tasked with the challenge to find the right balance between ensuring that the African consumer is protected and yes, ensuring that innovation is fostered. So how do we strike the balance? This is a question that I'll pose to today's panel, and I'm excited for us to dive into the topic, and I'll immediately kick off the session with the first question. As all of us know, many countries across the continent are actively working on critical policy, be it national strategies, be it regulatory sandboxes to ensure the fintech space is promoted. But could each of you maybe share of us which technology sector in your country is primarily focused on, and what specific regulatory landscape has been introduced to ensure that the consumer is protected and innovation is promoted? I'll immediately start with you. Minister Dr. Monica Musinero Masanza, I would love to have your perspective. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Glad to be here. I look at the tech landscape in our countries like organizing a concert. At a concert, when people come, they see the beautiful music, but behind the music, there are people who composed the music, there are people who innovated the instruments, there are people who organized. And looking at tech development, we have to look at those multiple layers if we are going to have the coordination. I think the challenge we have is usually to try and look at the top layer of consumption, and just trying to regulate that. But there are so many things that are coming from the other layers of innovation, of the organization of the systems, which we must be cognizant of if we are going to be able to put up. So in Uganda, we have two ministries in this. We have the Minister of ICT, and I have a colleague attending this meeting that is responsible for making sure that we have access the infrastructure. My ministry is responsible for the architecture, for building the components, for inventing the units. And so I'm going to give the initiatives that we have from that. Uganda wants to be a net source of tech, not a net consumer, because above everything is economy. And if you don't recognize where the economy is, your consumption will reach a point and it will lack something, because you'll just be spending. And as we know now, tech is taking over all economies. Yeah. So we have arrangements. We have a dedicated fund, the National Research Innovation Fund, and a portion of that is dedicated to tech innovations. We have a dedicated bureau. We call them bureaus under my ministry, whose focus is to make sure that we have the right policies that govern the back end, mostly the innovators, the commercialization, the linkage to dedicated funding. We have put up a deep tech center of excellence, so that we are not just focusing on shallow tech, but we are also innovating and trying to build platforms so that we are part of that. Yeah. We have an AI studio where we are developing AI tools, not just focusing on use, and all those are accompanied by policy initiatives, by coordination, and we are moving on to even look at those where we are deeply consumers, deeply consumption-based. And so even when you put policies, by the time your policy matures, the bottom line has shifted. So we are working to be players at the deep tech end.
Thank you very much for that perspective, Minister. I will then move on to Minister Dr. Margaret Ndungu. I would love to hear your perspective on how things are being perceived and done in Kenya.
Okay. Thank you, moderator. Yes, in Kenya, as a government policy, we are focused on, first of all, ensuring that digitization goes up to the rural part of the country. And we have this broad project that we plan to lay fiber across 100,000 kilometers. And with this, we recognize that this means we are expanding connectivity, we are expanding access up to the people who may not have the skills, who may not have used these technologies. So again, with that, we are working together to ensure that capacity building is incorporated with that. And with do capacity building, we are also onboarding digital services. At the moment, we have done 19,000 digital services that are from one end to the other end. So basically, that means you don't have to go to any building to get your services. And with this, we also recognize that as we are connecting people, we are building capacity, we are onboarding services, then we need to ensure that safety is a key thing. And that's where, again, regulations comes in, that we have to protect our citizens. We have to ensure that our citizens are accessing this digital highway in a confident way, knowing that they will not lose their data, they will not lose their information. And in so doing, then we are focused on policies like data policy. We are working on an artificial intelligence strategy that, again, will be followed with the policy in that area. We are also working on cloud policies. To promote SMEs, tech innovations, again, we are saying we do want to encourage innovation, we do want to encourage creativity, but then in a regulated way, and in so doing, then want you to be very flexible, to be very collaborative, to involve everybody, to involve the private sector, to involve the public sector, to involve the academia, to ensure that whatever policies we are coming up with, whatever regulations we are coming up with, they are progressive, they encourage innovation, they encourage creativity. Then in terms of also encouraging our young people, we do want to have competitive, open, and transparent procurement process, because again, we are not just encouraging innovation and encouraging young people to come up with these solutions that addresses our sustainable issues, contextualized to address local issues. We do want these solutions they come up with to scale up, to be used not just in Kenya, but then also to start exposing digital services across the continent. So basically, we are doing regulations, but in a very adaptive and flexible way to ensure that creativity is enhanced. Thanks.
That's very encouraging. Thank you so much, Dr. Ndungu. I will move on to the gentleman, one of the few gentlemen on the panel, Dr. Brilliant Habensu, who's the permanent secretary at the Ministry of Technology in Zambia, and really would love to hear your perspective on how Zambia goes about ensuring that regulation protects the consumer, but yet ensures innovation.
Okay. Thank you so much. So I would like to start first and foremost, with the sectors that have been, a target when it comes to matters of technology, and the one that government actually focusing on there. So we've got to what we call the 8th National Development Plan ourselves in Zambia, and so that one has focused mainly on creating, transforming our economy, and then creating jobs, especially for the youth. And so we've picked out agriculture, mining, manufacturing, and tourism as the key drivers for our economic transformation and job creation agenda. And so what we've done is that, all our focus, including the emerging technology, that is artificial intelligence, other emerging technologies, how are we going to ensure that they are going to be used effectively in order for us to optimize our output in these key drivers, including their enablers, water, infrastructure, and the like. So to that end, what we've done is that we looked at the infrastructure, because we know that the artificial intelligence and other emerging technologies would not make meaningful sense to us, would not be able to optimize output in any of these key drivers that we've looked at, if at all our infrastructure is not in place properly, if at all the data that would be able to collect or the data that we need is not properly organized. And so we have got what we call the Investor Access Service Fund, and using that fund, we've been rolling out infrastructure in terms of towers across the country, mainly targeting the underserved and the unserved areas. And then we have also, at regulatory stage there, we've also revised our ICT policy. And then in order to bring in trust and confidence, so that players in these sectors would not feel uncomfortable, we've also been revising the cybersecurity laws so that we can create trust and confidence. We have got the Data Protection Act in place, but then we realize that there are few gaps here and there. And so we've told ourselves that we are going back to Cabinet to go and ensure that we get approval in principle and then begin looking at these laws there. So the whole idea is to create trust and confidence within our data and ensure that even the players are able to, to play well within these sectors. The other issues that we also recognize are issues to do with digital skills. We know that most of our people could be lacking in digital skills, and so to that end, we're actually addressing that aspect as well. We have got a number of institutions, including under the Ministry of Technology and Science, which I had there, where we have now gone to embark revising the curricula around it, so that we try to emphasize issues of digital skills, so that people begin to learn those things there at an early stage there. And we've been supplying computers, using the very same Investor Access Service Fund to schools, even in the rural areas, just to ensure that digital skills are imparted to our learners at an early stage. And so basically, that is what we are doing as the Ministry of Technology and the Government of the Republic of Zambia.
Thank you very much, Dr. Habinsu. I understand we have a lot of private sector or members of the private sector in the audience. So one thing I would be very curious about, how does the governments or your respective governments go about partnerships when speaking to policymakers and also private sector actors? Oftentimes it's being portrayed as there being a disbalance between what the private sector wants and what the government wants. So I will then kind of pose the question to the panel: how do you go about public-private partnerships? I'll commence with Dr. Masansa, please.
Thank you very much. Again, this is a continuation, the demarcations between private sector and government sector when it comes to consumer protection or development of these industries. the lines are not so clear
Yeah.
that this one is interest and this one is interest. So we all have a joint interest in making sure that the ecosystem is favorable for users. Yep. It's favorable for developers. It is favorable for the businessmen. So in Uganda, the government does the coordination. We do the coordination, but our responsibility is to facilitate the private sector as key players in developing most of the things. Government only comes in areas where we see that the private sector has not yet been interested. They have not yet interested in that particular area. And so we come in to start it, to draw their attention, but also understand the ecosystem such that we can open the barriers. So our collaboration is, one, we work together on all policies. We work together on all the policies together with the private sector. There's a lot of consultation of all stakeholders, and they sit on the task forces working on each. So we are working on the different policies at the different levels, at consumption level, when people are using the tech, then we have at the economic level where people are doing business there. Yep. You know, we need our taxes. Yeah, when you come in, we need our taxes. So there are those policies. The private sector sometimes doesn't want that, but we need our taxes. And yes, and then we also need to go to the regulation level, which supports indigenous development of tech. And we need to make sure that they are secured, they are young, because Africa has been flooded with a lot of tech from outside, and you need to create room for the young ones, otherwise they will be choked. So we have policies at that level. And then we have policies that need to deal with already existing, there were policies, because most of Africa was not indigenously a developer of tech. We were consumers of tech. So there are so many policies, even in our own governments, which encumber that, which encumber the indigenous young people. You find too many rules, too many regulations which are unfavorable. So we work at these different tiers, and the innovators are private sector. So our overall policy is to facilitate the private sector, protect the consumer from what they must be protected to, but make economic sense at the national level and at business level. But again, I say, we want our taxes.
If one thing is clear, we all want our taxes. So thank you very much, Dr. Musansa. I'll move on to Dr. Ndungu. How does Kenya go about partnership? I know you've briefly mentioned some of the partnership that your respective ministry works on, but are there any forums, frameworks that you would like to highlight? I'll be very appreciative of that. Thank you.
Thank you, moderator. And yes, we work very closely with the private sector. As a government, it's our duty to create an enabling environment through policies, through regulations, and through strategies. And in coming up with all this, our constitution that we passed in 2010 mandates us to seek public participation in all these policy documents that we come up with. So at that point, we work with the private sector, we work with the academia and all the stakeholders to ensure that policies are as progressive as they can be and as accommodative as they can be. But then when it comes to implementation of projects, starting with the digital infrastructure, for the data centers, we are working with the private sector. Actually, they are the main drivers of that. When it comes to the connectivity part of it, laying of the fiber is a partnership. Our target is to lay 100,000 kilometers, and out of these, 48% is by the private sector, and 52% is the one that the government is doing. Actually, I think it's the reverse. The private sector is doing 52, and the government is doing 100. Then when it comes to digital services, the private sector is largely involved in that. We have our M-Pesa that is private sector driven, but again with government participation. When it comes to education, capacity building, and the like, again, we are working closely with the private sector. We have Ajira centers that are training skills in ICT that is actually spearheaded by the MasterCard. We are doing data innovation hubs or digital innovation hubs, which again is a collaboration between the private sector and the government. And in this, we are encouraging young people to come up with innovative solutions that are sustainable. Because again, when we come up with these digital innovation centers that we want to set up to the village level, we want sustainability embedded from the word go, and this can only be done if the private sector is actively involved, if they are the one who are driving that. So we are very open to that. Again, when it comes to Universal Service Fund that we are using to extend connectivity to the rural areas, the main contributors is the private sector. And with that, again, we work collaboratively to ensure that there's value for money, while they are not able to go to the rural areas where they may not be a good business case, again, working up on a sustainable model that will ensure that we build these technologies in a sustainable way. So in Kenya, private sector is key to what we are doing, and not just the private sector. We are encouraging academia, we are encouraging the civil society. We do want to have a collaborative approach, and it is in doing so, then we are able to create business cases for every stakeholder, but then we are able to ensure sustainability is embedded in that. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lugu. I'll move on to Dr. Habilinsu. How does Zambia go about partnerships with be it academia or industry?
Okay. Well, thank you so much, moderator. Yeah, so when the UPND formed the government, the first thing that we looked at, was to see how we're actually going to ensure that we bring in about economic development and transformation of the country there. And the one thing we know that the government realized was that we're not going to do it on our own there without the involvement of the private sector. So to that end, the President of the Republic of Zambia launched what we call the Public-Private Dialogue Forum, the PPDF.
Yeah.
So that PPDF becomes a platform through which the private sector and government alike there sit and then begin reviewing policies, regulations, and whatever it is. And so then we see if at all there are any areas that are affecting the private sector, which we think need to be resolved in order for us to have a smooth way of engaging each other, in order for us to have a way in which the private sector would be able to actually thrive. Yeah. So we have got that forum, and through that forum, many sectors that are actually playing, make contribution to the economic transformation and job creation of our country have been sitting. So we get into these policies there, the regulations that we have in place here. What are the challenges? And we look at those challenges, and then we sit, we agree. This is not working out well for us. Can we actually have a change? How do we want to change? Then we agree. If at all we feel that we see the changes that maybe the private sector are talking about are going to bring some challenges on the part of the government there, we voice it out there. We agree to disagree. And finally we have got some agreed position where we are.
Yeah.
We were hit by a drought in Zambia, and that drought, for instance, it affected our capacity to generate power. And that affected us adversely when it comes to matters of quality of service, especially in the telecommunication sector, because the number of towers, they go off basically because we did not have enough power. And so, again, we were able to engage the private sector, the MNOs, even the owners of the businesses, to come together and agree on how we are going to resolve these matters, basically because of this very same platform that we have. And so they were able to even bring in some little bit more money in order to ensure that we cushion the impact of the drought that we have, basically because of this platform that has been created there. We also have what we call the PPP Council of Ministers.
Yeah.
And so this PPP Council of Ministers is probably, basically set up in order to see how we encourage investment through the PPP model, and it is working well. In Zambia, I think we have had, a good number of other companies coming in, with this PPP model approach there to bring in investment in the country there. Then we also have got the BRA. This one is the one that regulates the business, like, if at all there are certain fees that we might want to actually hike or we want to actually revise before an SI statutory instrument is actually signed. We push it through that BRA, and then we allow everyone else who is going to be affected by these fees to have a voice, and we hear them. Then we have got an agreed position before we can actually effect, whatever changes we feel are supposed to be effected. So generally, we are working well with the private sector. We have got a platform through which we can, we can engage each other. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Habinsu. Africa Festival also attracts not only the private sector or governments, it also attracts a lot of entrepreneurs or youths. What are some of the ways where you see youth can play a role in policy making? Are there any channels? For instance, if you were to have a conversation with an entrepreneur in anywhere, are there any channels how youth can reach out to policymakers or contribute to this legislation? I understand it's a learning process. All of us learn from one another. Are there any ways how you go about including the voice of the youth or entrepreneurs? I'll pose the question to you first, Dr. Masanza.
I don't think you can talk about tech without talking about the youth.
Yeah.
I remember many years ago, for some of us, I was in the US and there was an advert. I think they were advertising some software, and the young boy would come and say, "The software is so good, even my dad can use it." So easy, even my dad can use it. So you cannot talk about tech without the youth.
Yeah.
And the majority of the players in the tech industry, especially from the view of my sector, the generators of tech, they are young people.
Yeah.
So you cannot design effective policy without understanding them, without giving them a voice, not even a voice, but involving them in the day-to-day decisions. So one of the things that we have decided in Uganda is to make sure that policy is well informed by data and research on the ground, not by a general sweep. Globally there will be a sweep of something that comes and everybody wants to have policy like that. No, we do a lot of research, we do a lot of primary data collection, and sometimes we find that the popular trend of things is actually not favorable to the local ecosystem, to the local policy ecosystem. And so we have to use that information. So we have a lot of initiatives where we are engaging the youth. We have a program specifically trying to understand how we take research from university into and develop it into businesses. Most of our universities have a lot of research. They have a lot of ideas, but they have never, they stay there. They finish, they graduate, they write their project, they defend it before a panel of academicians, get their degree and go and start looking for a job. So that is an initiative which we are working on together with the youth. They are really, I sit in the room and I'm the oldest. So, because they are the ones who understand the day-to-day challenges that they face. We also have engagement with being science, technology, and innovation. We have to engage across all the different sectors. And so we find that many times the young people develop tech in the country, but then the government sectors import tech, even of similar quality, to this one, and they are not buying the ones that we are developing locally. We are not adopting it in government to use it. And so we don't impose this, but we go and engage the sector and work on a pilot with them, together with these young people, so that they build the confidence that they are able to develop this. So collaborative, working together, engaging. I spend most of my days listening to young voices, so that we understand. The other thing we do is we've adopted what we call think tanks. We have think tanks, not in the sense as think tanks are understood as research agencies, but these are teams of individuals who sit and think and bust some myths that have been propagated for a long time. And sometimes when you just use literature review, you do research, you use international reports, you actually don't get to get those things. So we sit and think. We use a lot of hackathoning on the ground, and where possible, I will sit in the room the whole day together with them, and we listen and we learn, and such that the policies that we are developing are progressive. They are taking our people, especially the young generation, forward. So these are some of the initiatives, but we really listen to the youth.
Thank you very much,
Quite
Dr.
a lot.
Thank you. Well, Dr. Ndungu, I think it's quite known, Kenya is quite known for entrepreneurs, Silicon Savannah. So I'll be very curious from your perspective, how does the government go about listening to the voices of young entrepreneurs and the youth in general?
Thank you, moderator. And yes, Kenya has very talented young people that are in the digital space and are doing a lot of productive work. We saw that during the Gen Z operation in our country in June, July this year, and clearly showed how well educated our young population is and how much energy they have to direct that can be directed into productive use. So basically what we are doing, we recognize that the tech space is a space that we must promote. And we are working with like our regulator to do sandboxes where innovations can be tested, can be piloted, and seen how we can commercialize that. We are also working with the Kenya Education Network, is a research network with over 64 universities, both public and private. And basically that is also another entry point that we are working to use to ensure that we penetrate and we work with these young people, first of all, to harness their skills, to direct that skills, to ensure that we have very high top-notch experts that can help us be producers of technologies. We can start manufacturing products that are directed towards the digital space. So basically that's an area that we are harnessing and working with the universities. We are also in the process of starting to consult with both the public, the private sector, the academia, because there's a lot of data that is in the hands of all these institutions. And this is the data we need to contextualize and come up with solutions that will address, again, our socio-economic challenges. So with this, and with our massive connectivity that we are planning to work on, we'd want every village. We don't want everybody to come to the capital city to look for employment. We'd want this data to be availed at the place where the data is available, then build the capacity for these young people and ensure they have this data to solve their socio-economic challenges in their villages. And with this, we are able to decongest urban areas, but then also distribute development. And again, with this, we'll do a lot of massive training, because as I said earlier, we are opening digital space to people who have never been in the digital space. And that means there are challenges, there are risks that we'll be exposing them into. And that's another area we do want to use our young generation, our young talents, to build these capacities, to ensure that we have cyber hygiene, because that is another challenge that I see. If we are not proactive, then we'll have a young generation that is brought up using digital technologies just to play games, to go to the social media, to do all sorts of things that are not productive or they're not helpful for their socio-economic development. Again, we'd want to harness these young minds, these talented minds, to ensure that we are starting from young generation to channel them to be productive, to be more of content creators. And again, not just creators, we would want also to direct that to ensure that the content we are creating is aligned to our cultures, to our ethics, and we are safe in the digital space. So those are some of the areas that we are harnessing these very talented young people to ensure that we are building a digital future that is inclusive, safe, and secure for all of us. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Nubu. I will move on to Dr. Habinsu. How does Zambia drive a strategy of inclusion when it comes to youth voices and entrepreneurs?
Okay. Yeah, thank you so much. So in Zambia, we have got institutions that have been set up specifically to see how we can actually nurture innovations from its infancy, get into the incubation up to the time when it should be ready to begin manufacturing a product or offering a service as it were. So we've got the institution that is known as the National Science and Technology Council, and through that institution we have got what we call the Science, Technology and Innovation Youth Fund. And so that fund there has been set aside in order to ensure that we support innovations as they are coming right from inception. So at a certain stage there, then it is handed over to another institution, the NTBC, Nation Technology Business Center. So this one now brings it up so that the idea now, it is actually taken further to a point where we now get into where if it has to be patented, it has to then be patented. We are now working on it, or can I say we are revising the startup bill. This startup bill now has to help us in order to bring about what we call venture capital. Yes, how are we going to make sure that we fund these good ideas that have actually reached a stage where you are now able to either form a company or it is now able to be commercialized, as it were, like that there. And so basically, that is what we are doing ourselves. Then side by side, using our regulator ZICTA, we also have some money that normally is put aside to encourage innovators and also working in collaboration with the private sector. We have got a way in which we are actually encouraging a number of innovation, and we've set up some innovation hubs. ABSA, which is the bank that's come from here, South Africa. In Zambia, they have helped us come up with some innovation hubs in certain places, like the cabinet secretary from Kenya did mention that we did not want a situation where everything is congested around the capital city. Equally in Zambia, that has been the approach there, so that we can have a number of innovation hubs away from the capital, Lusaka. And so working with the private sector, also in taking up that type of an approach. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I know we are getting towards the end of our session, but before we close, I would like to pose the question to the esteemed panel. Are there any regulatory strategies or initiatives that when you kind of look into the journey of you managing the tech sector in your country that you are most proud of? Could you please maybe name one or two of those and maybe state why those strategies are making you proud or happy for the country? I'll start with you, Dr. Mosansa.
Thank you. Some of the strategies that we have, just allow me quickly mention three. One is a prototype strategy. A strategy where you build something that you want the youth to emulate end to end, such that they are not sitting in the space where they don't know, they don't have an example. Yeah. For example, we want to build automotive industry. You set up an end-to-end automotive industry and actually produce cars, such that when they come in, they can eyeball what they are working into. Yeah. And so for tech, we have put up a center where they actually come, and they are developing theirs, but they are living side by side with an example of something that started from idea to market. And so they have mentors within the same space. So not just putting when everybody has a startup, but they are side by side with something successful, and they can see. The other strategy is what we call the Deep Tech Center of Excellency. This is an approach where we have been able to bring together players from across the world and begin to work together on building foundational platforms together. And so our young people are working with the best in the world. They are getting in touch. They are not just isolated listening to us only, but they are in touch with working side by side. They are being mentored. They are trying to raise investment, but working side by side. So our Deep Tech Center of Excellency is one of the things that I'm really, really very, very proud of.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you very much. It sounds quite exciting. Yes. And Dr. Ndungu, well, from your perspective, that you are very, very proud of, you having worked in the space for quite many years. Can you maybe name one or two of those and why?
Thank you. I think I'll name one, the digital inclusion for Kenya, and starting with the M-Pesa way back in 2007, when it was allowed, technology was allowed to move without regulation. Innovation activities really happened before the banking sector was locked in, and again to ensure a seamless exchange of money. But then with that, within this sector, we have had the regulators, both from the telecom end, but then also from the financial sector end, all looked in together. And within the last close to 20 years, we have seen now the digital services all being plugged to the same platform, and it allows for innovation from whichever perspective, may it be in the education sector, in the agriculture sector. And as we stand now, we have one government approach with all the digital services being channeled through one pay bill number, which again takes care of issues of integrity in this digital space. So basically, from open innovation, allowing the tech industry to grow, and then plugging in the various services. And where we have now is that everybody can plug into that, which is open, transparent, accountability. And as we all know, in this digital space is what you want to put in, garbage out. So basically, if you want it to use that to ensure that procurement is seamless, we are able to deal with corruption, then we can be able to do that. So basically, I like that approach, and we all need to use it in an ethical way. I think now that's the area we need to proceed on. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Ndungu. I'll finalize or conclude with Dr. Habinsu. From your perspective, what regulatory initiative or strategy are you most proud of?
Okay, no, thank you so much. So, I'll try like this. So when we are coming into government, obviously, when it comes to matters of digital inclusion, we are, still low, and you have a number of, strategies, a number of interventions that we have actually put in place in order to see how we can increase those, numbers as it were. And so we revised the ICT policy, for example, and then also the digital transformation strategy, we came up with it there. Now, what had happened thereafter, after we did that, we also ended up issuing out spectrum that is suitable for 4G and 5G, because we had said, look, we would not be able to offer the digital services if at all the platform is not okay, and if at all mainly we are just relying on 2G. And so that alone there, it meant that we had now a lot of people begin to access internet. We still have a challenge when it comes to the devices, but at least that also helped us. But then, we also went ahead to issue out some licenses specifically for data, and that saw the likes of the Starlink coming to set up businesses in Zambia, or like coming to, so we are now able to access, Starlink services, internet services in Zambia. and also Biobab came in, BCS came in, and as a result, in terms of fiber connectivity, Zambia is now connected to all its neighbors. We're just remaining with the, I think it should just be Burundi along the Lake Tanganyika, where we still have, some gap that we're still working on there. So it means that once they are also connected, then we'll be connected even to our friends in Kenya and Uganda and Rwanda like that there. So, just that decision, to issue out those licenses there is something that I'm proud of, or something that we are proud of as a country, because we know that now we are properly, fully connected to all our neighbors.
Thank you very much, Dr. Habensu. I know we are almost off time, but I would like to thank the esteemed panel for providing us, the audience, with your respective initiatives that you are working on hard with, obviously, the country. And I look very much forward to see the progress happening on your ends. And yeah, thank you so much for your reflections, perspectives, and also thank you to the audience for having us. Thank you.